Hey everybody, hope you're having an awesome day. Our morning weather report is it's cloudy here locally. So here is what we're doing. We're having a little bit of a Q&A about body language, about what is body language? What is it that you guys want to know about body language? What is it? I'll explain a little bit about really what is body language, kind of really quick history of how I got started. And then I have a few questions that folks have asked so far. And then as you get in there and you put your questions in, then we'll go from there. So really, what is body language and how did I get it started in it? I'll start with what body language is. Body language really is our nonverbal reaction to our environment. And what does that mean? Well, it depends on statistics and studies that you watch, you read, and things like that. But really what body language is it's a big part of nonverbal communication. Our major communication is broken up into nonverbal and verbal, right? Verbal is the specific words that I am saying. I am saying very specific things to get the details across. The nonverbal side of that is what am I doing with my voice? The pitch, the rate, the inflections, the emotion that I'm putting into those words, right? The body language portion of the nonverbal is what am I doing with my hands? What am I doing with my head? What am I doing with my face and my feet and my body and my posture? All of those things go into the body language portion of it. And depending on who you talk to and once again, the studies, body language, depending on the situation, can take up the majority of the nonverbal side, depending once again on the situation. Fights or hard conversations or just lectures or whatever, whether it's a dyadic, which means it's just one-on-one, or if it's a group presentation, there's a lot of little pieces that go in with that. So that's body language in a nutshell. How did I get started? Man, how did I get started? Really honestly, this Friday, I have a chat with Nancy Chaffin, and she took me on a trip one time through 4-H. A gal was talking about how guys and girls flirt without even talking to each other, and how you can tell if a girl really likes you or a guy's digging on you, or how if you're on a date, they're not interested in you without saying a word, right? And of course, I'm like, what was that? I'm now paying attention. So that's really the premise. That's what started this whole thing. I was like, holy smokes, this is going on all the time. What is this? So I then just started teaching myself. I just started asking questions. I didn't know there was books about it. I didn't know there was studies about it. I didn't know that I could go into psychology and NLP mastery and figure all this out. I went out and I just started asking a crap ton of questions of random people. Of course, I started with my friends and they got annoyed with me. And then I went to a coffee shop and people would be talking and I'd notice something changed. So I'm like, okay, wait a minute. You just said something. I don't know what it was, but you had this reaction. What just happened? Why is that? What's going on in your head? And people looked at me like I was freaking nuts, let me tell you. But I learned so much. Fast forward a couple years, and once again, Nancy, I'm so excited for Friday. Nancy basically said, you've been talking about this. You've been teaching this. You won't shut up about this. I hadn't been teaching yet. She said that I was bugging everybody about it. Why don't you come teach a class? And then I figured out that I did know enough and that I could make an impact. So that's kind of the background. That's kind of how I started. Fast forward through college a little bit more, and I actually started learning that a lot of what you learn in college in communications had nothing to do with the nonverbal side of things. And I had conversations with the professor. I'm like, well, what about this? And what about posturing? And what about when you're lecturing, you need to pay attention to these things, and you have an interaction with your audience and all these things. And they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't understand. And so through college, I went a different way. I was more of a tech guy, so I was doing broadcasting, and I was behind the camera, not in front of the camera like I am now. But it was back there. It was back there. It was back there. Fast forward, I got out of college, decided not to go into the industry that I studied for, and then went through a myriad of different businesses. And finally, I was like, I got to do something with this. And so I started a program called Power of Body Language. And when I started that, I didn't realize that there was a book. I have it right up here, actually. I didn't realize there was a book that was already titled that. And I went around and I would I would actually travel with salespeople, and I would sit and observe their sales presentations and their interaction with their clients. And I would give them critiques and I would watch when things would fail and when things would work well. And I would coach them through that to recognize how things happen before they actually happen. What's really interesting about body language is that the part of our brain that's the freeze, fight, or flight is really what kind of controls our body language, because it's our reaction to our environment. It's always evaluating our safety, both emotionally and physically. So what happens is we're doing a sales pitch to our wife or to a millionaire, it doesn't really matter, and something goes sideways. We say something different, something happens in that conversation, and the other person starts shutting down. Well, at that moment, there's a few seconds between the time that they have that physical reaction until they're conscious of that situation. And if you can recognize their physical reaction soon enough, you can make adjustments in the conversation to kind of open them back up again, right? And one of the conversations and one of the things we're going to be talking a lot about throughout all of this that we're going to be talking body language is getting people to be comfortable. You know, I see Colleen's on here, and I bet you Colleen could really, really nail this one down, is that the more comfortable the other person is that you're talking with, whether it's in a sales presentation or you're just building that relationship. Colleen is an amazing relationship builder, is that the more comfortable they feel with you, the quicker you're going to build that relationship, and the quicker you can move to asking the sales questions versus pushing the sales information. And that's huge, is having that comfort level and being able to adjust your presentation or how you're talking to them and what you're saying so that they're more comfortable. That's what it's all about, is making sure or doing your best that that other person is more comfortable with you. That's what it comes down to, right? And that's what I did. And I taught bank tellers, bank managers, how do you have your bank tellers that are standing there and they're talking about people's money and the stresses that come around it, and lenders. I talk to realtors. I talk to network marketers. Those are some of my favorite people to work with, because they're out face to face, busting butt every day, talking to people at their kitchen tables. And that, see, my first real sales job was I was in Primerica Financial Services way back in the day, in the heyday. And that's really where I put the two together. It was even before I started teaching other salespeople. That's really where I figured out that the more comfortable, because I was young. Guys, listen, age discrimination is a legitimate thing in a lot of industries. And I was telling people that were my grandparents' age what to do with their money, and I was barely 20 years old. So, of course, they're looking at me. They're like, you haven't even made anything. How are you telling me what to do with my life savings? So by doing that, I was able to say, okay, listen, the more I can make them comfortable with what, how, and where, and when, and all those things, then the more we can converse and the better we can move this and the better we can build that relationship, right? So that was the premise, and that's really how I got started. I'm seeing some stuff, Colleen, building relationships. Girl, you are amazing at building relationships. I'm telling you, I've learned a lot from you. All right, so Jilly asks, how can you see discomfort and uneasiness? There's a lot to that, Jilly, and I'm not going to get into the really depth and breadth of it, but here's something to take in consideration, is that when we are all crossed up, okay, this can be a very defensive posture. This can be what I call blocking. So right here in our bodies is our directionality. All right. When it comes to communication, this is where, our bosom, our heart and soul, when the reason we have a rib cage over this part of our body is because this is where our vital organs are. And whenever we go into freeze, fight, or flight, our initial response is we are going to protect our vital organs. Now, translate that into emotional safety as well. We do the same thing when it comes to emotional safety. Is if we're uncomfortable, we don't like something, we're not happy, we don't want to be here, we're going to do this, or we're going to do this. We're going to put something between me and the person or situation that I'm subconsciously uncomfortable with. What we have to remember or realize is majority, almost all of our body language is subconscious reaction to our environment. Okay? Until we're taught, like we're doing right now, until we're taught that these things are done and that we can be conscious of them and we can positively manipulate them, it's subconscious reaction. We don't think to do these things with our hands. We don't think to say, ooh, wait a minute, something's wrong, that person's not happy, they're not open, they're not this, they're not that. What happens is we have these little tinglings, premonitions, women's intuition, all these things that's primarily what those are, is they're picking up our nonverbal communication cues and our body language cues, and they're translating to our conscious mind. Most of us guys are much more oblivious than ladies are. Ladies are much more wired, women's intuition, are much more wired to listen to these subconscious cues, right? But what we're doing here is we're making it conscious. We're opening our eyes to this communication stream that happens every moment of every waking day. So, Jilly, that's one thing to recognize, is that if you're talking to someone and everything's going good and then all of a sudden they kick back and they do this, something just changed. I don't know what it is. I call it incongruence, right? Or a major shift in attention. And so what happens is if there's a major shift in attention, because now I'm blocking, then you have to now evaluate, okay, what just happened? Was it something I said? Was it how I said it? Was it a subject change? Was it an environmental thing? Did it just get cold? Is it lunchtime? There's so many things. So you can start evaluating that. So that's one thing, Jillian. We're going to, as we do this more and more, I'm going to keep bringing all this stuff up. John, good morning, sir. Michelle, do people fake body language? That is a very good and loaded question. Yes. People who know can fake it. But here's something that I've had a lot of people challenge me on that. And what my best answer is that our mind and our body cannot argue for very long before one or the other wins. Okay. But with that said, is if someone purposely manipulates their body language to portray something that is not their belief, not the truth, there is going to be some kind of inconsistency, unless they are a pathological liar or they're a professional actor. Because if we are in our true self, we are not purposely lying. We are not purposely manipulating. We are not purposely changing who we are to represent something that we are not. Okay? When you're in that mindset, you can manipulate yourself in whatever way, because we just say, okay, at this moment, I am not this person, I am this person, and I'm going to get this outcome, right? But if we are in our true self, and here's a great example. If we are in our true self and we are trying to say something or we're trying to do something that is outside of who we truly are, our body language will start doing something else. If I start saying something that I really don't either like, I agree with, or I don't like the fact that I'm saying it, I'm going to start doing something around here because our subconscious is trying to, right? Same thing. If we hear somebody say something, or even if we say something we don't like hearing, then we can start messing with around our ear because we're trying to, right? So the short answer is yes, people do try to fake their body language. I'm working with a police department, and that is a major part of the conversation as well, is taking a look at people who are purposely lying and trying to wade through the incongruencies. And that's what it comes down to. I am not a lie detector. I am not an NLP master. I don't know who's lying and who's not lying. What I am good at, though, is recognizing incongruencies with what we just said a moment ago to what's being said now. Something happened right here, and I can evaluate what happened around that. So I hope that kind of sort of answers your question. I can smile without it reaching my eyes. So that's a statement or a question. There are genuine smiles, and then there are polite smiles. And that's one of the biggest tells of a genuine smile versus just a polite smile is a true smile, we scrunch up our whole face. We really smile. We get those laugh lines, those smile lines. Our eyes squint just a little bit. Our cheeks raise. Those are more genuine smiles. But I can smile, just a regular smile, and I have to look at myself for a second. I can smile a regular smile, or I can really smile. Sometimes there's subtle differences, sometimes there's significant differences. And the same way with laughs. I think laughs are something that once we know people, we can tell fake laughs versus true laughs. There's a lot more to that. Another buddy of mine, I was actually just on, I'm not fake, my ear itches, so don't. I was actually just on the phone with Juan, and a good buddy of mine, and he asks, what about hands in pockets? He's noticed that when he's talking, he's a sales guy. So there's times when he's talking to clients and his hands are out, and he's very animated. And then he said there's times when his hands are in his pockets. Here's my piece on hands and pockets. When we are in our element and we are on point, we tend to be more animated. We're going to use our hands much more. Now, you can be much more deliberate on how you use your hands, right? And I talk about that as well as a presenter, what to do with your hands and what's dominating and what's giving and don't do this. And there's a lot to that. But more and more what it is it's when we're in our element, we're really talking about what we want to talk about. We're much more animated with our hands. But if you put your hands in your pockets, and Juan, I'd be curious to know this, is that when you put your hands in your pockets, are you more quiet? When your hands are out, are you talking, and are you the driver of that conversation when your hands are out and you're animated? Versus if your hands in your pockets, are you listening more? Are you more quiet and letting that other person? Now, that's one thing that I have to do. And this was something that I had to learn the hard way. I have this tendency, and it's not a good, it's almost a skill, but it's more of a tendency for me. I have a tendency of kind of knowing where the conversation's going before we even get there. A lot of times I'm 2 or 3 subjects ahead in the conversation, and even though this person I may not know very well, there's a very good chance that I already know kind of where they're going to say, what they're going to say, where they're going to say it, and how they're going to say it before they say it, right? And when I was younger, I was rude. I learned this by trial and error. I really tried to figure this out, and I did a lot of things the wrong way. And as I do my presentations and my seminars and stuff, I tell people, I'm like, don't do it this way because I did it this way. And I learned it the hard way. But I would interrupt people. I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, I see where you're going with that, and your answer is this. So, because I was impatient. I wanted to get on to the next subject. I wasn't listening. I was reacting to the conversation, which is a whole nother conversation. That's a whole nother chat, is talking just conversation styles, right? So what I had to do is I had to slow myself down. I had to make myself stop and listen, because I was railroading people. I was just running over them, and it would piss people off. And of course it'd piss them off. And so I would put my hands in my pockets, and I always have at least 2 quarters or a pocket knife in my pocket. Maybe this is because I might be slightly ADD. I don't know. But when I'm getting in a conversation where I know, and this is something that now I automatically do. Back then I had to force myself to do it, and I had to be conscious about it, is that my hands, at least one hand would go in my pocket, and I would start playing with something. Because then that's bringing part of my mind's eye towards what's going on in my hand, right? And it would slow me down. And even though I knew where the conversation was going, and I really truly knew the answer, the comments that were coming up, I wasn't railroading people anymore, and I became a better conversationalist. It helped so much. So that's a long answer to that. So hands in pockets. There was another question that came up, and I did not write it down. Oh well, we'll keep doing on this. All right, any other questions, guys? One of the things I do want to touch on and plant seeds. This is a Q&A, but I also want to plant seeds for what's going to be coming in the next month or so. My hope is to be able to do a lot of these conversations several times a week for the next month or so. That's my hope, and that's my desire. Of course, Christmas is coming up, so things are going to be a little weird. But with that said, here's the topics that are going to be discussed over the next while. I'm a big handshake guy. I feel that handshakes are the lead-in to any relationship. And I'm going to really be talking more on the sales aspect of this, but this is across the board. This is life information. But what I really want to talk about is handshakes. I can tell, here's a little synopsis. I can tell whether or not you're submissive or dominant. I can tell how big of a personal bubble you are. I can tell how much personal interaction you want. And I can tell between the first handshake in our conversation to the last handshake when we leave, how I have built or not built our relationship in that conversation. And how long does a handshake last? 20 seconds, 15 seconds, 20 seconds. It's enough to maybe 10 seconds. So we're going to be talking a lot about handshakes, because the beauty of that is that when you're walking in and you meet someone for the first time, or it's the 50th time you see them and you shake their hand, handshakes are going to give you an indication of how you've built that relationship over time and where that person is at that moment. Because here's the thing, like I said, I can tell whether or not you want personal interaction with me at that moment or not, and if you're a dominant or recessive person, right? Submissive person. So I know, I'm going to pick somebody here. I know Colleen. You know, Colleen and I have known each other for years. So we shake hands. We're past handshakes. We're hugs. We're hugging friends now. But that's another thing. I want to talk about hugs on another day. Is we shake hands. Colleen, how you been? Blah blah blah. Well, you know what? Her handshake was different this moment than it was the last 3 times we sat down together. So now I'm going to say, okay, why? I'm not going to ask her that, but I'm going to start evaluating. She's a little bit bigger personal bubble. She's not as warm in her handshake, which means that she doesn't want that personal interaction. So maybe she's had a bad day. Maybe something's going on. Maybe she needs to move on to the next thing. So now I'm going to not ask her about how the pool remodel is going. I'm just going to jump into business. And subconsciously, she's probably going to respect that. She's going to appreciate that, because now I can do the niceties real quick, get into business, and then get out, right? All from a freaking handshake. And then we just build from there. Then we take a look at our how's our attention doing? Where are their feet situated? And then as we're having a conversation, how are people reacting to the topics that are being discussed? What are you getting positive body language feedback? What are you getting maybe not necessarily negative, but more aloof, or there's congruency issues or whatever the case, then you can put all of those pieces together throughout your conversation and go forward from there. Colleen, you are a hugger, and I love your hugs. I really do. So I have a whole section on hugs too, between bro hugs versus man-woman hugs. And there's usually a lot of conversation that goes in with what's appropriate hugging in the workplace or in the business environment or whatnot else, and what's appropriate, what's inappropriate, and how can you kind of adjust that or protect yourself. I have more conversations with ladies on this subject than men. You know, us guys, we're either huggers or we're not, and if we're huggers, we're freaking oblivious to it, right? Ladies are much more in tune to these things, and a lot of the questions that I get on hugging is, this dude gives me the creeps, he hugs too long, or when I hug this girl, it's weird, why? And so we go into that, and usually I'm able to shed enough light on it that they're like, oh, and I can give them enough tools to work around some of the uncomfortableness. Remember, this is all about comfort. It's all about being comfortable with the people you're talking to so you can get what you need, right? So anyway, Jill, you hugs, you just skipped the handshake. And that is, there are huggers and there are non-huggers. You know, when I was learning the whole hug thing, a good friend of mine, she hated hugs. She hated physical interaction. Wonderful person, great friend, hated personal interaction. So what do you think I did every time I saw her? Ah! And I'd run over, and I mean, she'd run from me, but she knew it was coming. And she knew I wasn't being a jerk face about it, but I would go and give her a big bear hug. And we were able to have a great conversation about it, and about people who have really big personal bubbles and have touch issues and things like that. And we go through that even with handshakes. You know, the whole limp, fishy handshake, right? When I was younger and I was going through this, those really upset me. They made me angry. And unfortunately, I had this misconception that there was a trust issue or, you know, a pride issue or whatever else. No, it's not that at all. It's just that person at that moment and how they deal with personal interaction. And as soon as I wrap my head around that, and as soon as I let my pride go, then I was able to interact with those people way better, and it helps so much better. Jill, I don't have a choice. You're getting a hug. I'm okay with that. I'm a hugger. I'm a big fat hugger. I'm soft. I'm good. Thank you, Michelle. I do give good hugs. I do. And I don't have a problem hugging bros. You know, I don't. And it's so interesting to me. I come from a farming, ranching community. Guys don't hug. You know, guys, when they shake hands, it's an arm wrestling match and they're going to break your damn hand kind of a deal, right? And that was hard for me to get out of. You know, guys don't hug guys. And in high school, my 4-H crew, man, we were tight. We were brothers and sisters. And I finally just let it go. I was like, you know what? It doesn't matter. And it's funny because when I get to know my guy friends or even business associates that become friends, you know, I'm the same way. I'm like, brothers don't shake hands. Brothers got to hug. And it's awkward for them for the first couple times. And then they're like, this is just Dale. He doesn't mean anything by it. There's, you know, and it's good. There's actually been many studies that state that you actually have to have that kind of physical contact every single day. And the statistic that I love, which of course, when you do studies and you get statistics, the numbers are all over the place. But the statistic that I love is that you need to have 12 intimate contacts a day, meaning that you need to be hugged or some kind of flat palm contact, which we talk about that in the handshakes. This is a very intimate part of your body. It really is. Palm contact is very intimate. And we talk a lot about that during the hugs. is you got to be careful on how much palm contact you have when hugging, because it can be very uncomfortable and very misleading, right? So, but yeah, you need to have a lot of intimate contact today. Now, of course, there are people who don't need that and they resent that, but for the rest of us, we need a lot of personal interaction, personal content. So with that said, we're about at the half-hour mark, and I want to make sure that we don't spend all day doing this. But guys, I really appreciate you all being on here. I really do. And I'm looking forward to having more of these conversations. I'm going to be creating a YouTube channel as well, and I'm going to start doing these pieces, these segments. I'm going to start throwing that up there. So as soon as I get that finished in the next couple of days, I'm going to throw that out there. So I'd love for you guys to start jumping over there. And if you don't mind, here's my shameless plug. If you don't mind, please invite people over to the Dale Maxwell Clan page here. This is where we're doing our investigation into kickassery, and we're doing a lot of these. So unfortunately, I can't do the side-by-side yet on this business page, entrepreneurial page, because Facebook hasn't rolled it out to me yet. So unfortunately, I'm still doing my kickassery on my personal page, and then I'm sharing them over here. Eventually, I want to do all of that right here so we can keep track of it, and it's a little bit easier to archive. But I'm also going to be taking these interviews, I'm going to be putting them over on Facebook, YouTube, so then that way we can document this stuff. And the beauty of YouTube is that it's archived. It's a search engine, you know, so we can do that. We can have great conversations over there as well. So if there's anything else, what word do you hate? I didn't catch that. What did I say? Jill, help me out real quick. What word do you hate too? I love the word kickassery. I was trying to figure out what to name this chat series. It's not an interview series. I stopped calling it that. It's a chat. And I keep saying I keep telling people kick ass. Just go kick ass. So yeah, this is kickassery. Statistic, yes. It's like Mississippi, PPP. All right, guys, I appreciate you guys. Keep smiling, keep rocking out your day. Invite some people over. Continue the conversation in the comments, because this can continue to go. Invite some people into this conversation as well, because I'd love to keep doing these Q&As. This is where I thrive. This is the conversation topic that I love. So rock on. Love you guys. Keep smiling, because guess what? Somebody needs it. Talk to you soon.